travelers, and welcome back to the Temple of Kung Fu. As always, I'm your host, the Shaolin Kid, and tonight's tale...
This man was fearless.
is Fearless, released in 2006, directed by Ronnie Yu, starring Jet Li and everybody's favorite professional wrestler turned martial arts actor for some reason, Nathan Jones. Everybody's heard of him. And this movie was loosely based on the life of Hu Zhejia. Correct. I'm sorry if I butchered that, but yes, he was a Chinese martial arts legend, a hero, and I will get into why right now, or later, I guess. But this film was it's a kung fu film. Obviously, it's loosely based on Hu's life, and overall, it's an action kung fu drama. It's wushu, right? And getting into the action, it was all great. Watching behind the scenes, they said they tried to use as little wire work as possible. They tried to do as much of it, like, in the moment as they could. And I really think that is the best way to do it. This film was very, very well choreographed. Probably one of the best, kung fu films I've seen in the last 15, 20 years in terms of choreography, because, damn, there was not a single miss. Every fight had something unique happening, or something interesting, whether it was story-based or in the fight itself. There was just a lot going on in a good way, because the film overall was just very strong in the combat department. But just besides the combat, the story, too, was very strong, with the development that Hu himself went through, and him being kind of cocky, arrogant, super competitive. He was pretty disrespectful. Obviously he had his morals, but he was also, it was kind of gray area, right? Because he kind of had a bit of muddled morals. He was a little violent at times, and it drove a wedge, and it eventually got his mother and his daughter murdered because of his own, actions, and they were consequences for what he did. And it's like, did he go a little too far? Probably. And if he hadn't gone as far as he did, and if he hadn't reacted the way he did, his mother and daughter possibly wouldn't have gotten killed, and he would have had a downward spiral to the point where he tried to kill himself after running away from his hometown and his school for years. But eventually he was saved by a group of farmers, became a farmer, and then he started to appreciate life more. And in his time with the farmers and with these people, he realized that there's more to life than winning. There's more to the life than competition. Really, the real competition is the competition with yourself, the conflict within yourself. Your real enemy is you. And he realized that, and within him realizing that, he was able to appreciate life more. He was able to take in the little moments, enjoy life, because he wasn't able to do that before. Because there's a moment in the movie where, he has to win at everything. He can't just win at fighting, he has to win at literally everything, because he's that super competitive. And they're, planting these, rice things, rice into the ground, and these two guys are taking slow, they're taking their time, and he sees that they're a little ahead of him, so he just goes, instantly starts going up and up, and then eventually there's a big cool breeze, and all the guys just stand up and they just, let the breeze hit them, and he doesn't understand what they're doing, and he just keeps planting aggressively. But then they reveal later in the movie, or a little bit later, his planning was shit, because he was doing it way too fast, right, and he really didn't know how to do it. And he just was trying to beat the other two guys, when in reality, he should have just been taking his time and appreciating what he had. But he wasn't. But then later in the movie, with the grandma character and with a blind character named Moon, he realized that he was the problem and that he needed to change his ways. And when he realized that, there's another part of the movie where he's planting rice again and the breeze happens and he stands up with the other planters and he takes in the breeze as well, being able to enjoy the little things in life, just being able to enjoy life in general. It's a really beautiful scene when you think about it. And honestly, it's just a really beautiful message. Just like, it's also like, it takes courage to, be, to like, maybe not embrace death, but to not worry about it, right? Because when you've come to terms with it, why worry about it, right? Because in his final moments at the end of the movie, he's content, right? He's happy. He's not scared or, I don't know how to describe it. He's just not scared. He's not worrying about anything. He's like really at peace with himself, right? Because he thinks, or maybe he has done all he's needed to do. He's given all that he's wanted to give in life so that he can, go on into the next, right? Or that's the idea, right? Just like the ox Yellow earlier on in the movie, which is a nice little, maybe a bit of foreshadowing or maybe a bit of a metaphor too, because the ox, it was dying, it was old, but it was still trying to give as much as it could give in the last moments. In its dying moments, it was trying to give all that it could give, but it knew that its time was up, just like Who did at the end of the movie. It's a nice little full circle moment. But with that being said, with all the messages and being said and all the nice moments, let's get back into the more action-oriented things. So I mentioned very world-renowned professional wrestler turned martial arts actor Nathan Jones. He was like this big bad American boxer who was insulting the Chinese people and country by calling them the weak men of Asia, right? And then who stood up to him and fought for the honor of China and beat him. But he saved him from dying, from getting stabbed by these spikes on the end of the ring. And Nathan Jones saw that and he respected it. And, he raised his hand like, this guy beat me and I respect him, right? But I'll let you know, if you didn't know this was slightly based on something real, but it's a little funny, so let me tell you. So, in Who's hometown, in real life, there was this Russian wrestler who was basically, kind of just being anybody wants to fight me, I will fight any of you, and of course nobody was, gonna fight this random guy in a park, right, just yelling at people to get him to fight. And he started calling them the weak men of Asia, or the sick men of Asia, I believe it was called. You're all sick men of Asia. You don't want to fight me. You're too scared. And then Who was like, okay, I'll fight you. And he's like, oh, I didn't mean any of that. I forfeit the fight. I was just putting up an act for money. I don't actually want to fight you. It was pretty funny. And obviously not what happened in the movie. Because obviously, it would have been a funny scene, I think. But obviously they wanted to make it more dramatic and more cinematic, as you can say. But then there is another aspect to the film. So obviously at the end of the film, he got into a gauntlet with a bunch of these evil, foreign higher-ups, elites, I guess you could call them. They were what do you call it? Fat cats. Corporate fat cats is basically what they were. And they lost a bet on the Nathan Jones fight, so they had an idea to take down Who, lower the Chinese morale, and get a shit ton of money, is they just get all their best fighters from their respective countries, put them in a gauntlet, 4v1, and just stomp them, and then they get all the money. And that's essentially what they did. And of course, but before the gauntlet happens, Who talks with the Japanese fighter, Tanaka, I believe his name was, and Tanaka from what Who says, he gains a little bit of respect for him, he really respects his mindset, he really respects the man that he is, so and he wants to be an honorable fighter. He doesn't want to do any cheap tactics. He wants to fight him for real. But all the other fighters are either bitter, or actually the English boxer gets taken down in like 10 seconds. Who's the first fighter, which is pretty funny because realistically, he's just a tall, muscly guy. Like, what is he gonna do against a guy that has like a master of martial arts? Realistically, he probably would get his ass kicked because it's brain versus brawn and technique versus brute strength. Technique will always beat brute strength most of the time. But then he fights. He fought the guy with the spear. He fought the Belgian guy with the spear, and it was really funny because when he beat him, he was like, "Ugh, ugh." He was the most poutiest one. He was like pouting because he was so mad that he lost, and he was crying and shit. It was funny. Then there was another guy who was a fencing champion. They didn't really, I think they specified earlier in the movie, but I wasn't really paying attention to that. It didn't really matter what country he's from. But he was a fencing guy, and they actually had a pretty decent fight. It went for a decent amount of time. But eventually, the rapiers that have like is that like a handguard? Is that what it's called? A handguard? So you guys know that. But obviously, during the closing moments of the fight, who cleverly stabs his sword between his hand and the guard so that he can disarm him, and he puts it up against his neck, and he embarrassed him, pretty much, right? That's a pretty embarrassing way to lose a fight. It's not only be disarmed, but also to where if this was a real fight, you would be dead, right? That's pretty embarrassing. But the guy took it on the chin. He bowed to him, he's like, yeah, man, yeah, you beat me. But then it was Tanaka, of course. The final fight was with Tanaka, but the Japanese guy knew they would lose. He knew who was going to beat Tanaka, so he poisoned his tea, which I'll get into later. So he poisoned his tea, and obviously during the fight with Tanaka, he spits up like black liquid, being poisoned and all. And eventually, there's a big pause, there's a timeout, and his students are like, I'll get revenge. And he's like, no, revenge only brings more bloodshed. We do not need revenge. It is not our way, right? And eventually he's like, I will fight. I will fight. In my last dying breath, I will fight. And Tanaka, eventually they fight. And even though Hu is at like a very big fraction of his power, obviously he gets his ass kicked, but he doesn't get his ass handed to him. Like, he still holds a bit of a fight, right? Because he is a kung fu master. But eventually, Tanaka is actually like, he doesn't want to fight him, right? He doesn't want to, but he's kind of forced to, right? And eventually it looks like Tanaka will beat him, and the evil corporate fat cats will they'll win the bet. But then, it looks like the referee or whatever, the announcer is about to call the fight, and he goes, stop, wait! And he goes, and he raises his hand, and he forfeits the fight, so that Hu wins, right? And the Japanese guy gets really mad at him, and everybody's cheering and storming. So, another detail is that at the very tail end of the fight, Hu goes in for the killing blow. He goes in for the punch, and he holds back. He pulls it, right? And he smiles and he collapses. And then Tanaka, in that moment, he realizes if he used that punch, he would have been done. It would have ended the fight. He would have lost. Because earlier in the movie, not only did he kill Master Chin in a fight using that same punch, he also saw his father use that same punch earlier on in the movie. So Tanaka knew, not from that, but he knew that he had him, and that if he had used that punch, he would have lost, and Hu would have won. So he picks him up, and he forfeits the fight, and he says, he is the winner. He is the real winner of this fight. And then obviously the evil Japanese guy's like, what are you doing? You're a disgrace to your country. You suck. You're not Japanese. And then he's like, you are a disgrace to Japan. You suck. You're not good. Right? And I like that. I like Tanaka's character, and I think he was actually a pretty likable character for the amount of time that he had in the movie. I liked him, because he's an honorable fighter. He fights with honor. He has the same mindset that Hu has, right? And the fact that it's not about winning, right? It's about respect, honor, culture. That's really what it's about. Honoring oneself and country. That's kind of what it's about, right? That's what it should be about. or at least honoring yourself and the others around you. But yeah, honestly, the film itself. Oh, wait, almost forgot to mention something. So, you know how I mentioned earlier how the film had who get poisoned by the Japanese. Now, that may not be totally inaccurate. Now, obviously, who in real life was not in this big gauntlet against like the best fighters in the world, you know, and he didn't like heroically go down in like this gauntlet, and then the guy for like, obviously that didn't happen. But what really happened is that he was prescribed a medication, and he got home and he took it, but as the weeks went on, it just his sickness got worse, and eventually he died. Now, at the time, his students and some other Chinese folks believed, because the doctor was Japanese, that they poisoned him because they were jealous of his fame and his success and his fortune. Maybe not his fortune, but they were jealous of his fame and his admiration, so they killed him, right? And that was kind of just speculation until 1989. They had to excavate and relocate him and his wife's grave. They had to take him to another gravesite, and they found him in his pelvis. There was, what was it? Arsenic. There was arsenic in his pelvis region, which was signs of poisoning. Now, it's still up to debate because Chinese traditional medicine at that time could have used things like that, and it was just he was prescribed the wrong thing, or the medicine just wasn't that good back then, and it just got him killed. I mean, or you could do the conspiracy theory where the Japanese conspired and poisoned him. I mean, you really could make a point for that, I guess, but I feel like the more realistic thing is that he probably was just prescribed the wrong medication. I mean, it happens all the time, right? You think they killed him? I mean, do you really think that, or are you just joking?
Japanese are always the bad guys.
Yeah, guys, no way. The Japanese are always the bad guys. Always. I mean, well, at that time, the Japanese were pretty bad. But, yeah, it's obviously not as epic as it is in the film, but there is a little truth in there. Whether the Japanese did or did not poison him, I'm not as well informed on the situation, so feel free to give me any information I may have omitted or I may not know about. Maybe I'll change my mind, but as of now, there's not really as much supporting evidence. I mean, obviously, I guess you could say the Japanese hated like any kind of Chinese heroics, so they would want to stamp that by making it look like a medicinal accident, but where's the evidence for that? But I mean, even though the film may be fictitious here, maybe a little dramatized, exaggerated, that does not matter because the film is just a damn good movie. It is very beautiful, it is very emotional, it is very fun, it is very action-packed, and overall it is just a very good movie, you know what I mean? It's very engaging, enthralling, very just fun to watch. And honestly, I would absolutely recommend it. Fan of action movies, kung fu movies, Jet Li, even if you just are trying to get into the kung fu genre, or you're just trying to, maybe, I don't even know, just watch this movie. I don't even know, just watch this movie. It's a great time, and I guarantee you'll enjoy it. And with that being said, I think I'd rate this film a 7.5 out of 10. Very enjoyable. Really, really liked it. Very, very good. Very beautiful. And, yeah, I think I've said what I say. I think I've said my piece. So, guys, I hope you all liked this video. Share, friends, subscribe, turn notifications on. Comment below how much you liked it. And I've been Shaolin Kid. Buddha be praised. Off to the Chinese countryside to find inner peace. Freeze frame. Is that something in there? Dun, 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 dun.